He lives
Yeah.
on the sharp corner before my.
Ah.
Only thing.
Yeah, dude. Yep.
Oh, are we on? Okay. Henry?
Okay. I couldn't say.
Oh.
Oh, this is so good.
Yeah.
Is this like for reading, or is this actually?
Yeah.
So
It's all part of it.
I thought we tackled the mileage first, because that way, for the next agenda, we can pick a policy that I can put on the next agenda if you guys want. Because there's basically two policies. One is accountable plan plus non-accountable plan, and one is just accountable plan. I don't know if any of you had a chance to read through them. Did he, might have,
I did, but I didn't,
okay, that's fine.
because, I thought tonight, I guess this is budgetary in a sense.
Well, yeah, I'll need to know what type of policy you want to go forward with, and then based on that answer, we'll determine what we do, right? Because if we go with one with a non-accountable plan, which gives like fringe benefits to employees like we talked about, then we gotta figure out when does that go in effect, where are we gonna get the funds from, and then you'll want to add that to your budget next year. So I think the first draft one has like how much the fringe benefits would cost for a year, which is about
That's estimated.
estimated. So I kind of did it like for compensating mileage, like to and from, board and committee meetings for like employees that have to go to that. I'd come up with a plan to do like an allowance. Because there are, not all employees have to go to board meetings, and then some do. And then trying to factor in, like, based on that employee's like job description and like what they're required to do, how many trips they'd have to make. And then, so that's just an option that you can offer. I'm not saying you have to offer it. And then the other, draft two is basically status quo of what we've been doing, which we've been kind of providing mileage reimbursement under what's called an accountable plan by the IRS code publication, the 535. And I gave you guys the information for like guide, the publication 535 IRS code, and then guide to fringe benefits and stuff like that. So it explains to you what has to qualify under an accountable plan. So what we've been doing, draft two is like our current status quo. It's just, I need to know from you guys, from the conversations we've had before, what type of policy you want, draft one, you want draft two.
I think from my own perspective, speaking for my own self, I need time to look at this a little more closely. So I personally would like to hold on this until, I don't think we're in an earth-shattering time. I mean, we're keeping with the precedent we've already set currently. So we're not in an emergency situation where we have to make a immediate change at this point in time. So I just would prefer, if everyone's okay with it, to wait until Monday to pick one of these.
I'd like to see it on the agenda. You've given us this information, we can review it and see
Well,
what we
yeah,
want
So it's-
and discuss it and possibly
Then
vote
come
on
back
it on.
it's gonna be on the agenda, but if you choose draft one, I need to know where are you getting the money to pay for the fringe benefits?
Next year.
No,
This
this
year.
year.
If we enact it this year.
Correct.
That's
Right.
that's our choice right now.
That is your choice.
Again, we have set a precedent in what we've done thus far.
Yeah.
So that this is not an emergency, like halt everything we're doing and try to solve, right? So I guess I'm
I'm
just saying,
fine with that.
I'm not in
Yeah.
a rush, and I think that anything that we put into effect, in my brain, would be effective July 1. Based on budget alone, I don't think we can just.
And looking at the
pull
budget,
money out of-
It's also gonna tie into the personnel policy as well, so.
Yeah.
I think, once I get, that's all gonna tie into the personnel policy, which I would hope will go into effect like as soon as it's like approved by you guys, because we have kind of a weak personnel policy as it is right now, so I'd like to, the sooner we can get one in here, the better, and that was the goal, that was my understanding was, this got brought to my attention, got brought to your attention, and here we are. So here we are.
With that being said, we do need to figure it out, but I think if we are requiring an employee to go to a meeting at night or whenever, that would apply. Mileage should apply to that if we're requiring our employee to go somewhere.
I think so.
if we keep on to the status quo right now, how would, I know you can't give me exact, but how would the budget look in that line item estimated?
We're
Kind of
are
on
we
the
right
average.
now? We're like in the middle.
Okay,
So we're halfway through, and I anticipate that we're going to eat that up.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot more traveling now than there was during COVID. There's a lot more classes that are in person than there was 2 years ago.
Mhm.
So I anticipate we're going to eat that up. As far as where we can take it out of the budget for this year, it's kind of, I was telling Lindsay, I think it's kind of too early to tell where things are gonna end up. So it's hard to anticipate if you could come up with half of that, what's on your list there.
Yeah.
So at this point, I really don't have a thing, oh, well, we're not gonna do this, but so we can
Yeah.
take it from here. I don't really have that in the section of the budget that comes from.
Right?
all right. No, we know where we're at right now.
Yeah, because
So-
I looked at the
counts.
lines too on the last, we got in our last packet for the last meeting, and there was a lot of things that are running, we're about halfway, and they're right there, so that was one of them.
So I think this is probably a good time if you have questions, to discuss them.
I don't have questions, I have my own opinions, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna save those for Monday.
No, yeah, should.
I mean,
That's fine. No, that's totally fine. That's the only reason why I sent it out kind of ahead of time. It's just if you had questions or we're looking at the budget right now, whatever thoughts or questions come to your mind, but it's gonna be on the agenda anyways, so.
More reading.
Should be a tax law. That's not good.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
to do anything. All right, so
So here we are, our first meeting on the budget. Two sections of the budget that I've seen since I've been here is the capital improvement section and the salaries and benefits. Seems to be the hardest section to work through. So I want to talk about those because everything else pretty much falls in place. We do have one contract out there that we need to pursue, which is a heavy contract, and it's the transfer station hauling. I believe Lindsay's almost at the point of drafting that, and finishing that up. So keeping that in mind, pretty much everything else falls into place. The two hardest pieces are capital improvement and benefits and salaries.
Okay.
So the time to start thinking about the capital improvement is now. What do you guys want to do? You know, are there sections pieces that you want to see get done in the next year for, a long-term plan? For me personally, I'd like to see our time clock system upgraded. We have to disconnect at the transfer station bring it down here. We can only use one user, so I'm working on that. The other thing that we talked about that I've looked into is our real estate online. When you go out to our website, you go to Assessor and you look at the property cards, there is an upgrade to that. So I'm looking at trying to do that as well. That's gonna be around 500, I do have a quote for that. The other thing we've been talking about is a new security system in the front hallway. We're now being charged $20 every time we make a phone call to them. So I think it's time to start looking at that. So just to give you guys some ideas on, things that we're gonna be looking at, Holly needs a bandstand. She got those numbers back to me today. People don't wanna put their expensive music equipment on the ground. And I can understand why. So it's time to start thinking about that because that seems to be one of our hardest pieces and one of our biggest hurdles to get over, gathering that information, how we're gonna do it, what it's gonna cost. So maybe next time we meet, we can have a list of things you guys might wanna get done through the capital improvement section of the budget. Okay? Now, for one of the hardest conversations, payroll and benefits. I'd like to talk a little bit about retention, recruitment, and our future. So the very first thing I gave you is the minimum wage, chapter 26, MRSA. So, third line down, on January 1st, 2021, and each January 1st thereafter, the minimum hourly wage that in effect must be increased by the increase, if any, in the cost of living. There's no end in sight to that. So how do we remain competitive to that? I did on your next page, nope, that's part of the law.
Oh, the next section.
The next section, I'm sorry.
This one.
I'll give you guys a minute to look.
So,
You're looking at the law. So that's not gonna stop. It's gonna be cost of living until they come along and change that law.
When did that get snuck in? I missed that one.
Yeah,
2 years ago.
yep.
Wow,
The
that's,
Well-
city of Portland's even worse, so.
It started January 1st, 2017. They started increasing it from $7.50 to $9. If you go to the next page that I put in your packet,
oh, I saw that somewhere.
it says main minimum wage on the top.
It's like in the still in the same one.
yeah, let's pull the first two pages off.
One more.
Yeah, you pull your paper clip off.
The other back,
Yeah, they're back. No worries.
thank you.
This is
Well,
what
there.
the budget is, directing people what page to be on the packet.
Jessica, you're really good at it
Oh,
too.
I'm getting there.
She is.
Last year it wasn't so hot.
So what I did is I did a timeline of Maine's minimum wage from 2016 through 2024. And what the percentage increase what was for that for those years. If you look through 20%, 11%, 10%, 9%, one year it was 1.25, 5, last year it was 8%, this year it's gonna be 2.55%. Now, if you look at the bottom, I did what the town did for COLA. So 18 was 0, 19 is 2, 20 is 2, 21 was 2, 22 was 1.5, and 23 was 0.5. So if you take the same $9 and you apply our percentage rate for COLA compared to the percentage rate of cost of living for minimum wage, you can see we're behind the 8 ball in FY '23. Then we had on the bottom, this is the pay scale that MRI provided us. Okay, most of the transfer station is at $18 to $21. Just keeping this in mind as we walk through this. On the next page, I'll wait for you guys to make notes. Some of our colleagues have gone out and asked other municipalities what their plan is for 2025 in regards to COLA. You know, it's great to say, oh, no, we're gonna do 1% or 2%, but our future, if we do 1% or 2% down the line, there's going to come that point where you're gonna have to do a major catch-up in order to compete with minimum wage. Okay, so this is where I wanna get people thinking about this and how to retain, recruit, and how we're gonna get there in the future. If you wanna wait 10 years, get to the future, and then all of a sudden you have to increase your salary budget by $100,000 in order to stay competitive. So I'm trying to get to the point where, get you guys thinking, how do you want to implement remaining competitive? Okay? So those are the COLA rates that have been collected. And then on the next page, I have the cost of living for Social Security. That's 3.2%. And then in your last section, your last section of wages, I just did a quick Indeed Town of Lyman and run it down. So looking at some of these, there's a lifeguard, $13.80 to $15. Our transfer station is 18 to 21. There's a receptionist, 17 to 18. There's a counselor, well, I'm not gonna do that, that's a salary. There's a front desk receptionist, 17 to 21.
Are
There's
these
a
all,
bud tender.
I'm sorry, are most of these part-time because our transfer station people are part-time, or are they just part-time because that's what
All
comes
I
up based
did,
on the area?
Jessica, if you look at the very first page,
Yeah,
my
Lyman,
search
yeah.
was just Lyman, Maine.
okay,
To kind of give you an idea of, even though minimum wage is gonna be at 14,
Yeah.
15,
this
that's
is.
not what people are offering out there these days.
Mhm.
Just to try and get that thought process of retention, recruit. Yeah, you know, thank you.
Yeah.
And our future and how we're going to get there. So I just ran some of these jobs, you know, $16 an hour for a lube technician, a receptionist, 18 to 22. I said our transfer station is 18 to 21, and that's with the survey that we just did. So that's, last year, you know, they said, I can go work at McDonald's, I'm gonna get more. And clearly they can. So that's the thing I want to get started with thinking about. A few years ago, before I came, they were having a revolving door over at the fire station. They wanted to know why. Two of the biggest things that they garnered out of those exit interviews, money and main PERS. So that's around the same time that we added main PERS to the fire station. And then a year later, we had our select board clerk leave. She got a phone call from somebody who was already trained, who would have been terrific for the position, but we didn't have main PERS. So she never applied. In order to garner those people, we went out and we put through the process of adding main PERS to make us look more, you know, more interesting. Biddeford, huh?
Competitive.
Yes, correct. Biddeford, what Deanna's touting on all of her advertisements is work 32 hours, get paid for 40. There's a 4-day work week. Waterboro, I think, is going to a 4-day work week, if I remember right. Sanford went to a 4-day work week. So it's not always about money. It's about what can we do to be competitive, to get good people in the door when we need them. We've been very lucky so far, and Lindsay and I were talking about this, that, we've garnered some really good employees. But what is our future gonna look like? I know, Portland, constant, they have a constant list, and it's this big. So I wanna get people thinking about, okay, not just, oh, it's 2% and it's 1%, where are we? How are we gonna remain competitive? How are we gonna bring in those people that are gonna suit the town well? And what can we do to do that moving forward? So I'm gonna leave you with those thoughts, and maybe when we reconvene next week, you guys might have some thoughts about that, on how you might wanna do this, or have a conversation of some different ideas. It's up to you. Salaries and benefits, a lot of things are changing.
Okay, I gotta ask a question.
Mhm.
Hourly rate is pretty cut and dry. Where do you put in the benefits part of that, where it's 100% paid? Because that is a big part of a
That-
draw for an employer to offer that.
Exactly. And you use that, so when I first came here, that's what drew me in. Somebody who was interviewing me mentioned the cost of the entire job. We call it job costing. I know scholars who don't understand that. And when I came here, the fact that someone in this little town knew that, I wanted to know what you knew. What more did you know? It intrigued me. So that is definitely a tool that we use when you
Yes.
sit down with somebody coming in.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always have to be about money. So if you look at job costing and the fact that the benefit is paid 100%, we use that as a tool. Look, your health insurance is 100%, so that is a tool. And you want to do more tools. What is our future for recruitment retention gonna look like? And we use that tool.
That's part of it.
Deanna uses her tool all the time.
Yep.
Work 32 hours, get paid 40 on every single one of our advertisements.
Yep.
So it's not always about the bottom dollar. When you sit down and you see my spreadsheet, you sit down and you show people this is actually what the job worth is, then it kind of connects with them. And we use that tool. So that's what I'm trying to get people to understand.
Yep. Good.
And what kind of things do you guys want to see? Clearly, if we go with cost of living, we're behind the 8 ball. It doesn't take much to figure it out. But what other things can we offer you? Do we want to catch up with that sometime versus waiting 10 years and having to throw 100,000 just to remain competitive? Do we want to plan out from here to get to here?
When I was interviewing people for admin clerk and stuff like that, and I interviewed a bunch of applicants, one of the common questions that would come up was, what do you offer for, what do you call it, for kind of like a step increase? How do you offer incentive bonuses? So most private sector companies, obviously do this where, you get your training under your belt, you're here for 6 months, you have a good performance review, we'll bump you up, right? And then every year, we'll look at, trying to bump you up. So that was a really common question that came in the interviewing process is, what do you do for merit increases? Right now, the standard is we don't really do anything for merit increases, and it comes down to negotiating with the person. So we had MRI do the step. They mapped out the step increase for us. So it may be one scenario could be if I hired someone that, I felt was a good fit, maybe they didn't have all of the educational background or, as much as the experience background that maybe we would have wanted, I can negotiate with them and say, I can start you at this rate. Because I have, let's say the annual salary, and I'm just gonna throw 50,000 out there. If it's 50,000, I negotiate them a little lower than that. And then I'll use that buffer as my, and then we'll get you up to here and bump you up. But once I hit that max, that's it. I'm all done, because we don't have a plan for like merit increases or incentive bonuses or anything like that.
Okay,
So I'm
Yeah.
gonna also throw in my background with negotiating with unions, step degree longevity. Jessica's,
Sorry.
I hate
I'm
this
done with
conversation.
Teamsters.
So, I mean, those are also incentives, you know, get your step. If you get your degree, we'll pay you more. You know, you've been here a long time, we'll give you a little incentive for that. Those are other things we can use to retain and recruit.
Mhm.
So hopefully that gives you some thoughts.
yeah, and just as a little recap, since we've worked on this in the past couple of years, and we have made
Yeah.
some
Huge-
progress, huge progress.
You know,
And, you know, I was just thinking about before I made this comment, of the five, there's only two of us in the corporate world. Everybody else is either town or self-employed. So, you know, we're in that world to understand exactly what you're saying. And I hear it all the time at work about STEP program and what have you. I think we've come further along when you were talking about interviewing people. When I first got here, I was horrified the way they were doing. Is like, well, in 6 months, if you're doing good, we're gonna give you a $2 bump. Based on what? You know, we have no type of review process. And, you know, if you're doing a good job, that's great, but we have no documentation for it and what have you. So I think as we build this for the future, you're absolutely correct. And I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea. You know, we're getting there. We're working.
Yeah.
this
We're working.
blows my mind that we're discussing this at this point. 10 years ago, we talked about it too. And with the addition of town manager, I thought that probably this would be a place that we would look into.
Yep.
Because what happened was, it's never been merit because nobody was able to do reviews with everybody in a timely fashion every year. And it was just all over the place, and with people coming and going on the board and things, it just never happened. And that's where all the percentage increases came from. I know that you guys had, last year, you caught up, did that study
Yep.
and caught up some of the things. And for 2 years, I was against raising personnel budgets and salaries because I wanted that done. That's why I was against that. It was like, I wanted it to become more fair. So it was nice that you guys, you know,
Mhm.
got something done there. And I think that's good, but that's why we were adding percentage increases, because there was no way to,
Yeah, so
for
I
us to
had,
be able
Yeah.
to every year annually see how people are doing.
So
Yeah.
do we
And-
go from getting rid of the COLA to a merit raise every year?
Well, see, that's what I'm asking you
And-
guys.
Because that's how it's always, that's how it was
That's what
done when
I'm
I was at
asking
Sam
you.
said, was you got a merit
Do you
raise.
wanna
I-
do steps and COLA? Do you want, because you hit that top
Well-
step, you get nothing.
And
So these are
Not
some of the
necessarily.
ideas.
But also, to do it on merit, to me, is better, because you're not rewarding somebody for not towing their line or doing their job or whatever. And I'm not saying anybody here is
No,
not
no.
doing their job,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I think we have fabulous employees. And, you know, you do make some good points. I had a percentage in mind, because now that you've caught up, I'm not cold-hearted. When I need a raise, I give myself one. I always do a good job. So, I know there's other ways to go about it. It's just weird, you know, I have worked in the private sector before, and I was actually in a union, and I was a shop steward once when I was 18 years old, and I had a mouth. It was
No
fun.
way.
It was
No.
I can't even
So,
envision
I
that.
know.
Jeez.
And so,
Sorry.
I understand. all the sides of it, but it's been a long time since I've been on that side.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a tough thing for a company to do, it really is. We just went through it today at work. And, and my salary, my rate is all based on, my performance, a review, and then where I fall in that category, and then there's a percentage, the way they do it, and what have you.
Yeah. I've seen it done
And you don't get a
so
COLA
many
raise.
different ways.
Right, that's what I always had.
It was a
I
percentage,
It was
also
something
never really
somewhere around
understood
COLA.
yeah, and they do,
automatically getting a raise every year.
Hmm.
Is that, I mean, that happens? I
Oh,
don't give
yeah.
myself a raise
Oh,
every
absolutely.
year.
absolutely, yeah. But there's expectations from you, there's expectations from your job to do, you can exceed your expectations, you can sometimes exceed them, or you can sit back on your laurels and do nothing, and you will get, in my world, you will get the big goose egg. They have it in there, but, if you're working and, people need to be compensated for it on an annual basis.
I think she's talking about the COLA though, which a
Mhm.
COLA isn't like a raise. It's your cost of living, it's, if you're getting paid $15 an hour and cost of living increases 3%, then your $15 an hour isn't worth $15 an hour
Right.
anymore. So, yeah.
It is a raise.
So you
That's
get
a
it.
raise.
I'll agree to
isn't it?
disagree with you on that. It is a
This is
raise.
always a tough
The
one.
cost of living, an employer has no control over the cost of living. So, I don't know,
Well,
I don't necessarily agree with that.
I agree and disagree too, but I'm looking at like, if you're $15 an hour and cost of, $15 an hour is like, the $40 an hour, right? Say $15 an hour is like a maximum amount someone can get and cost of living reaches, now minimum wage is $15 an hour. I'm just using random numbers to like put it in perspective. I'm not,
So,
so yeah, I think Jeanette's point is it catches up and
at
then
some point,
that's where we get,
Sure.
it's kind of a raise and it isn't a raise, but then.
It ultimately ends up causing compression. So I'll just share, that's where we're at with some of our units, is that we have a step schedule. And instead of working off of that step schedule, we're in a pattern of publicly funded place that we don't have any money, and everybody negotiated across the board. And then what happens is you get disgruntled employees because they're stuck in step, right? Why have a step scale? Where am I going? How am I supposed to get anywhere? I've been in the same step since I got here.
no
Why did I come in the
incentive.
door and you showed me these steps, but I don't leave the step? Which I say, why did you negotiate across the board? But that's a different conversation. I guess my point of sharing that is that we did this work with MRI and we have that data as far as steps and scales. So I think I don't have a solid opinion on this right now, other than that I don't want to lose sight of that data and making sure that we're utilizing it and staying
Exactly.
within it to a degree. And maybe it is that we look at those pieces somehow and plug that in, because I don't want to have spent the money for the data and then not use the data, and make sure that it's the purpose of that was that we had clear
Yeah.
information to kind of plug
And-
people in.
I think I recall when we talked about that stuff, there were some people who were at the max. And I think that's what's gonna happen is people are gonna be like, I'm at the 5th step. There's no more steps for me, right?
Yeah, and in my experience, we've done either like a lump sum or a percentage for that individual. We're not just gonna be like, sorry, you're out of luck. Thanks for sticking around. Like, it doesn't work that way.
We kind of did last year.
It's different.
Well,
Yeah,
place.
we were laying the
Let's
groundwork,
not-
and everybody
we're
was
not
fine with it. I mean, you were one of them, I think, when you were max or so.
I'm not max, but I was at the meeting. We
Over
were
the
trying to get
median.
everybody to the meeting
Yeah.
at the least.
And everybody was great about it.
So, yeah,
Because
so,
we had data to back it up.
Correct.
yeah, so we got our starting point.
Mhm.
And I'm with Jessica. I don't wanna see us lose that
No, I
starting
agree.
point. I wanna move forward. I mean, there's 100,000 different ways that you can move forward.
Mhm.
I've been to a place where they do a COLA and they give the town manager $10,000 for the kudos, job
Like performance.
evaluations,
Or
and which I know she's working on. So I've seen that structure. I've seen the step degree longevity COLA structure. You can do it a multitude of ways. And you never know, not everybody's going to be incentivized by the same thing. You know, I got piqued when they brought up, because it was a really low rate, when they brought up, you know, job costing. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I want to see what more you have. And that's what brought me in. And I said, okay, well, I get the low rate. Let me show you what I have. You show me what you have, because you've piqued my interest. And we'll get into where this job really lands. So that was the conversation that we had at that point. So I was interested because they brought me something that I have scholars that don't even understand that. And here's this little town, and I was like, okay, talk to me. You know, you can get there a multitude of ways. For some people, it's flexibility, you know, being able to offset your time, being able to come and go. I have a sick child, so maybe I'll work 10 hours, 12 hours on Friday. When I want to say, oh boy, 2018, 2019, this was a big conversation with the management program, the management people, is, okay, everybody's aging out. We have millennials. Millennials don't work 9 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 5. How do we accommodate those things so that we bring in the younger staff and start training them? You know, I mean, if you look at the job postings, manager wanted, manager wanted, manager wanted, and that was becoming a real issue. Managers were coming out of retirement just to help out. So it can be a lot of different factors that we throw in that makes it attractive to come to Lyman. One of the things that's probably the hardest is the negativity. We can't have the negativity. So people, I listened to tapes before I came here. I wanted to know everything about Lyman, and I could hear the voices. And when I met those people at my interview, I'm like, I know who you are, but I wanted to know what was going on. So there's a lot of different factors at play to being, you know, an attractive place to work. So I wanted to get you guys thinking. I see some people already taking notes from the rest of these. So this is a really good conversation to have. Are we done with salaries? Sort of.
Yeah.
So we meet next.
So, yeah,
we're
no, it's
I'm
good.
curious.
It's a good conversation.
We're meeting next week too, so sit on it, think about it. Vicky?
We anticipated, I know we're gonna have increase because we're gonna, have a separate, we're working on separating out the town clerk stuff. So that's gonna add to salaries, but I'm wondering, are there any other new positions that we're gonna wanna create for this upcoming budget? That's gonna factor into the ones, how much all the insurance is. I remember last year and the year before, there was a person on the budget committee who no longer lives in town that was wanting to start having employees pay some on their salaries. I don't know how this board feels about that. I always thought that was a benefit. Like, I always thought that was a,
We costed it.
it's good insurance, and the fact, I mean, it's almost unheard of.
Well, we costed it last year, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember exactly, but I wanna say there was a difference of like $7,500
Yep.
total based on who takes the insurance here. Cause I think there's a couple people that might not, and they get the payback. But it was like $7,500, and to me, employee morale, and I think the whole board agreed, was employee morale was worth that cost. Like, it wasn't enough of a cost, $7,500 was not enough of a cost savings overall to take that away and have disgruntled people, cause, I don't know, I'd be
I
pretty
always,
pissed if
Well, in
I,
the-
she
in the
had it paid
minimal.
for and then was told, oh, well, you gotta pay
in,
a piece of it.
in the budget, in the budget committee side of that, I was never in favor of that, because,
Yeah.
and once you open that door, it opens wider and wider and wider.
It is.
No,
mean,
it's good.
I see what happens when my husband pays for our insurance. He pays a lot, and it's not wonderful.
It's,
We've been self-employed, I can't even begin to tell you
Oh,
how much
I
fun
can
that
imagine.
is. That was before
Oh.
Obamacare too, so.
it's another incentive tool like I use in the interviewing process as well. Like I said, like we don't have, you know, a solid system in place yet. I think we're kind of getting there, you know,
Yep.
so we have some tools, but when people are like, so what do you do for merit increases? And I can segue that conversation into like, yeah, but we have these other benefits, and we do use that Excel spreadsheet tool that says, this is how it bolsters your income. So that is one of those, I use it as a tool.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm trying to draw people in, and it is useful.
Yeah, if our fringe rate was like 54%, that'd be a different conversation, but.
It's really
Okay.
good.
Good,
So-
thank you.
Benefits. The world of benefits is changing and it's changing fast. The state of Maine a few years ago implemented, we were the first in the nation to implement earned paid leave. So that became another benefit. The state of Maine on January 1st, 2023 implemented payback of earned paid leave. So if you leave, you get everything that you've banked.
For being earned paid.
Yeah, correct. Earned paid leave and PTO, vacation, sick time. So that all gets back to you. Now, the law,
Not if your policy doesn't say that, though.
no, it's a law, Jess. Now, January 1st, 2023 became a law.
All right, where are we?
What
Do we
law
have
is
that?
that in here somewhere?
If you look at state of Maine in the year of our Lord, 2019,
No,
oh, that's earned paid leave, never mind.
Okay.
I
No,
didn't
it's
print
not
the
in
other one out, sorry.
All right,
There is a factor of a certain amount of people in that one. So we have been paying it back. We've had a couple of employees who have passed away, and we've paid the amount that they have earned. That's gonna be another incentive. I know as of January 1st, 2023, any paid leave that you have earned and have not taken, you get paid at your point of leaving the establishment. There is like, must be 50 I can't believe I didn't put that out. Must be 50 employees or over, et cetera.
How many do we have?
Well, it depends on what they determine as an employee. So we went through this with Obamacare. What do you determine as an employee? And every time they enact one of these laws, we have to find out what they determine as an employee. They could determine you guys as an employee. Obamacare, they determined our stipend firefighters on call as employees, which was a really fun calculation. So every time they enact one of these laws, we need to determine what an employee is. Now, we've been paying it lately, and it's another incentive.
It's also a liability if we don't budget for it.
Thank you.
So I'm
So-
sorry, I'm blown away that this is a thing. I wanna go back, I wanna look at that law because
It's an
I have
unfunded.
1,300
unfunded
hours of sick time on the books because in case I need it or whatever.
Mhm.
But I'm not getting paid that when I leave. I'll get paid my vacation time, but not my sick time because we bank it as two different banks.
Two different banks.
PTO
The
is
only bank
different.
is PTO.
Okay, so that makes me feel better about what you were
Yeah.
saying, but it still is a liability, and I guess that kind of goes back to some of the
Okay.
personnel
So,
conversation.
speaking of that liability, years ago, it was common for people to do contracts, police chiefs, fire chiefs, superintendents, all of those things, where they could bank their time and they would get paid at the end. Well, now 20 years down the line, and that was an incentive to recruit people. 20 years down the line, Now all of a sudden you have this massive liability. And people were retiring, but still getting their full pay for 2 years, for 3 years. What we call that is sick leave at termination. And it's a liability we now have to put on the books according to GASB. So one of the things, depending on how this conversation goes, we already need to put that on because there is some, per contract, if somebody was to leave or under certain circumstances, we will have to pay out. So I want to do a reserve account to start that liability going. And depending on what you guys want to do as far as the PTO, from January 1st, 2023, anything you earned before that doesn't count on that payout. If you want to continue that and use that as an incentive, then we can compensate for it in our reserve account for sick leave at termination.
I'd like, I'm sorry, these are my initial thoughts.
Mhm.
I'd like data on sort of what current, it doesn't need to be by person's name necessarily, but employee, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever.
Right.
It's out there.
What's out there for balances?
So basically, you have a contract and there's a liability there. If that person, if something happens and you just want that person to leave, there is a payout there. So that's number one. We need to cover that reserve account. But if you remember
What do you mean? Go back for a second. Like, you have a contract, you're talking about,
you guys have a contract in this town
yeah,
with someone,
okay. Like a service or employee?
an employee,
Okay,
Appointment.
and there is a notation in there that if, say you guys just want that person to go away,
Yep.
there is a payout that you have to come up with for
Mhm.
that.
Yep.
It has to be, what do they call it, for good reason, like
yeah,
there.
just cause.
Yeah, just cause, thank you, I'm having a day.
It's okay.
For just cause. So if you want that person to leave for anything other than just cause,
Yeah.
then you have a payout.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be part of this reserve account that I'm gonna be building up.
But I guess how many of those contracts do we have?
You only have one.
Exactly.
So it's, just remember, 1/1/23.
Yep.
Anything before 1/1/23 that was accrued does not count. Unless
Right.
you want it to count.
No, see, I'm just gonna say it. I don't want it to count, and I want to have a personnel policy that's really clear that you don't carry forward goals and goals of time because it's not good for employee morale and employee performance to not take vacation and just to hoard your time to get paid out later.
Yeah.
Back
So I
to-
just,
to
I'm
new
sorry.
laws. And I agree with you, and that's what we used to do. But new laws now are you have, maybe you could speak to that more. You can't dictate.
Right. The way I understood it was if the employee earned the time, the way the law is written, because the employee earned it, that's why you have to
That's
pay it
theirs.
out. Because it's theirs, they earned it.
So
Yeah, and we will pay it out by having you use it.
Yes, I know where you're going with that.
So I can carry forward 320 hours of annual
It's like
leave time,
me-
and I have to
like
use it or
me-
lose it by December
vacation.
31st each calendar year.
you want
So-
See, where I'm different is that mine is PTO and
Yeah, see, I
it
got
is,
2 banks.
yeah, see, I don't. I have vacation, holidays, and sick time is on PTO. And there's a scale on how many hours you can max out at, I'll just arbitrary number, 400 hours.
Yeah.
But after 400 hours, then you start losing. Okay, it doesn't accrue
So-
anymore, but you can carry it over from year to year.
Yep.
Okay, so, which is
Yeah.
kind of nice. So there's
Yeah,
just
I can
another,
carry some for it, it's
Take
just
it or
capped.
lose
So I want
Yeah,
to
there's
look at
cap.
that a little bit more and
Yeah.
dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because the use it or lose it, it was earned. It is now owed to you. And it's a fairly new law.
Mm.
So
So I
I
think-
think the use it or lose it, honestly, somewhere down the line, there's gonna be case law that says No, the person earned it, it's theirs.
They earned it and they can't be unjust, like, I can't unjustly say you can't take it.
No,
Right.
you can't.
Like, I can't say,
do
no,
that.
there's no vacation time for
So-
you, right?
so-
I gotta be a responsible grown adult and plan my life accordingly.
But these are just, I'm.
Yeah, no, I'm just,
No,
I'm sorry, I'm
no,
just
you're
These
right.
are
going with
just
that.
things that have come along.
Yeah.
Wondering,
You know, and I
It
guess
seems like
like
that.
And as
every
a,
single year, there's more and
something
more.
different,
more.
absolutely. And this whole thing of you can't make somebody take vacation, that all comes from a management perspective. That all comes on how you manage your office, your business, that you want to encourage people to take. You don't make them take, but you encourage them because they're working hard. They need that time to recoup and what have you. There are people that, oh, I don't want to take, but they need to. And
Yeah.
I
just.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
struggling with
they
that,
actually
so.
say vacation payout, if they leave, has to be paid on the next paycheck. I'm reading it right here, 2023 change.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
know that vacation time has to be paid out. I'm talking about a cap on the balance you can accrue. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
yeah,
So if
they're
somebody
not-
works here for like 20 years,
Yeah, they're saying something about policy, so that's,
I just,
I think
yeah.
Like,
I'll dig into that a little more.
PTO versus
could we
PTO
do
and
something
sick time.
like having
how to go into a
So-
personnel policy.
have to take their vacation time? Or it gets paid out at the end of the year, so we don't have to carry it year to year to year? I mean,
So,
we set the policy, right?
Correct.
Right.
so
I
my
want to dig into
point
this a little bit
is,
more, sorry. I'm
Yes.
not-
I don't wanna argue it out tonight.
No, it's good, it's good conversation.
Thinking
Yeah,
about.
it doesn't require you to let them accrue vacation, it says right here.
I don't,
I'll dig into it
Yeah,
before next
I'll
time.
send you the
know
link I
this.
just found.
I work, I get money. I take a day off, I don't get money. That's how it
Meanwhile,
works.
I get like
There's no
12
benefits.
holidays, and sick time, and vacation time, and there's a reason why I stay where I stay, so.
But that,
Pros and cons.
that as well can be an incentive
Oh, absolutely.
for recruitment. That's
Mhm.
kind of where I was going with this,
Mm.
for recruitment, and for retention.
Mhm.
That's another one that is also an incentive that you can use. There's another new one that's in the works right now and sitting on the floor that is paid family and medical leave. So there's still a lot of things out there that are in question. A group I'm in, they're keeping close tabs on it. It's those that have over 15 employees. But then again, what's an employee? You know, and who do we have to count in order to say, yes, we're at 15, or no, we're under 15? So that's another thing that we're gonna have to start looking at as well. Want the bill number, because you're looking at me funny.
No, I'm just,
No, no.
I heard about the,
Yeah. So it's just changing fast and furious, just to give you guys some ideas on something to think about till we meet again. You know, capital improvement, employee recruitment, retention,
succession.
succession. How are we gonna work these things out, and what are we gonna look forward to in the future? It's great to go year to year to year,
Mhm.
but then you get year to year to year, and you get here, and you're like, we gotta add 100,000 just to remain competitive. So I'm trying to get to, we have our baseline, trying to get to a point where, okay, we have a plan, and it's a solid, steady
Mhm.
plan.
Compression is not a place we want to be, for sure.
No, I've been there before, just.
Mediation, it's a great time.
Oh, yeah,
It's the fourth time I've heard that word today.
Sorry, mine went pretty good.
so that's kind of what I had, is to basically chat with you, CIP, payroll, benefits, where we're going. Those are the two biggest sections that we kind of stumble on in the beginning, and we're trying to get these numbers in at the last minute and trying to make these decisions at the last minute, and kind of wanted to come out of the gate and let's deal with the tough stuff, because the other stuff, just supplies, electricity, that all just kind of falls into place.
Yep.
And the other stuff that doesn't fall into place, we have contracts for that.
Yep.
And the biggest contract that we're gonna be looking at is the hauling contract this year.
I'm also wondering if we want to start, or consider starting a reserve account for Bungana, if we're making a plan,
I don't know.
for, a
That'll
lot of
come.
market expansion and of things there.
Yeah, I
That's,
had a note about that, sort of almost swapping out what we were doing for Kennybunk.
Yeah.
To Bungana kind of thing.
we originally started off with putting like 10 grand
Right.
into the budget for Kennybunk, and then we switched it over to a reserve account.
Yeah,
So,
so the timing
and I
didn't
had-
get wonky, yeah.
yeah, we had already started talking about that. And, so it would depend on, I think a reserve account would be better, because if you can't get that project done this
Mm.
year, you still have those funds. How much?
I think it really depends on how the rest of the budget shakes out.
Yeah.
I also had an idea about, the computers, the laptops that are for the board.
Mhm.
I think there's one laptop that stays here that never leaves, if I heard correctly.
Well,
Would that be Rusty's?
Mine's definitely not here. I mean, mine's here for
You,
sure.
you leave it here all the time, right? You don't use it. Well, when we instituted that, it was, the reason why we did that was for, there was a lot of things you had to rehash. When new people left the board and new people came on, the idea was if everything was in a laptop, there would be legacy of how decisions were made, the information how we came to these decisions and all that. And we thought it would be used for a tool like that. I can see that nobody uses it like that, that when you get it from after it goes to the data guy, it's squashed. There's nothing there. You start getting your own stuff, like I got my email coming through there and all.
The reason.
And now, in this day and time with smartphones and whatnot, would it behoove us, I'd like to check on costs, would it be better if we had like town issued smartphones so that we could have our email, phone calls from constituents, otherwise if we would need to call each other or text each other or something, because I've noticed some FOIA requests, people requesting personal phones and stuff, and I
And
just,
the biggest kicker of going, I mean, that's a great idea. I mean, that might be a cost savings idea, but try to blow up some of this stuff when it's a 40-page packet.
and I get that too, but there would be a way too that we could get
So,
things printed
I
for
think-
ourselves.
I'll tell you a couple of things. So one of the reasons why it gets it gets recommissioned. Because when a new board member is elected, they weren't a board member before, and there is confidential information that gets passed through email sometimes or saved on a computer. So you don't get to have, that's confidential, that only the board member elected during that term, take for example, you have an HR liaison. He may come into, connection with some confidential information that stays confidential. So when his computer gets recommissioned to somebody else, the new board member does not get to have all that confidential information.
That
it's
that
hard
was
to
never
control
a
that.
consideration in the
Yeah.
decision-making process and how we
I'm
went
just
about
saying,
doing that. I
it's
understand
hard
it.
to control.
But it's not working the way it was envisioned to work.
Yep.
And so, I was thinking about ways, I struggle with that,
I'm not done yet, though.
I'm sorry.
So then, going back in June, we instituted the acceptable use policy. I think all of you got a copy of the acceptable
Yeah.
use policy. I think you might have all signed it at some point. And the reason why we did that was because our property liability provider said, look, if you want this, we give you free cyber liability. And if you want to continue having free cyber liability insurance, you have to institute these policies in place. So that's why we did it. And it says you can't use your personal phones and all this stuff. There's all these extra measures to be like more secure. And so that's what Brendan's working on right now. We ran into a glitch with the whole fob key thing. So the idea was, some of you were like, I'm fine with just using my phone. And so if he can get this fob key connected with your phone, then we're in compliance with the policy and cyber liability stuff. So that is the plan, like, we're working on that right now. It's just taking a long time to get through all the glitches.
This is where I'm coming from. I don't want to use and I will not use my personal phone
And
for
that's
town
fine,
stuff, so
but I'm
that's
just,
why I brought up the idea of, instead of the laptops, maybe we have town phones.
you can
that
do
way,
that. But then for
you wanna
some,
see it,
like
there you
Rusty's
go.
saying, he can't blow it up on the phone, so he
Yeah.
needs a laptop. Like, again, some people have visual impairments.
And it's- but
you
I
have to
think
make
it's-
accommodations for them.
It's
Yes.
50/50. If you care, if they issue me a laptop, I'm not carrying it to the job site. It's not gonna go to a construction site, it's gonna sit in my office, and the only time I'm gonna get to answer anything is if I can make it in my office.
Right, and that's,
So this, it's here on my hip, oh yeah, Lindsay, what do you want? I can answer it back. But yeah, you have that hard time seeing,
no, I understand, yeah.
yeah,
So-
you need
Yeah, and-
both.
It's a good idea,
Those of us who work in the corporate world can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, we can't be on doing town stuff during the
Yeah,
day. So,
and that's one of my things too, I mean, somebody's paying me to work for them, I hate to be on town stuff.
yeah, I know. I can't get a hold of you. You say,
I hate
I've
doing
set
things
my
like that.
thing down and what have you. So that, yeah, it's a
It's just a thought, it's just a
I know,
thought, we're
good
throwing ideas
conversation.
around, so.
good
So
conversation.
I would
But I-
like to,
Oh, I'm sorry. But I would say, one thing I would say is the laptops we have are way too big.
No,
We-
just
we can
yours.
downsize
Just
those.
yours.
Huh?
Just-
No.
Oh, just mine? I know she has one too.
I have
They're
boat
boat
anchor
anchors.
too. I do like it during budget time.
Boat
I do like
anchor.
to pull it up.
They're so heavy.
It's very heavy, but it is nice to have the larger.
Guess I haven't seen
during
that,
budget
so-
Oh, they're very nice. I used to have them right here because, you know, the
I
other
didn't
thing
bring
is
it
when you
tonight.
start talking about, there's another road that we can go down to is sustainability. Okay, which everybody's talking about
So much
sustainability.
paper.
We generate a lot of paperwork.
So
We
much
could
paper.
reduce the amount of paperwork that's thrown away by using our laptops because they send everything to us electronically. Then you have to have a big screen in order to see things,
But there's,
you know?
there's preference, right? Like,
Oh, absolutely.
Amber she started out with an iPad and she was like, I am not an Apple person. So then we happen to have another laptop that we could commission. So we had some of this stuff available.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you might get 2 new members next year. I don't know. And then, one might be like, I have a visual impairment. A cell phone's not gonna work. One might be like, I can't use an iPad. So it's really
Yeah.
hard to gauge like
That's
what's
true.
gonna work for someone.
I think
I
it's
mean-
having some type of an allowance in the budget
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Preference.
Yeah, we have to have some flexibility, but you're right. I can't use I won't use my, personal phone for town business and,
Yeah, well, that's why you have the emails too, so a lot of the I just send it all to your town emails.
Yeah.
So whether you choose to use your phone or you wanna hop on your laptop, it's kind of your guys' choice.
I guess I need
And I
to
will
find
say-
a class and learn how to use that.
well, and I will say, since she has become town manager, and I think you guys probably agree, our amount of emails have gone from this to this.
Except MMA, they send so many emails.
Well, yeah, let's just put
I
it,
think
So-
those get filed in a different
Okay.
folder in mine now.
Yeah, mine too. All those go to a different folder. I just get the important ones come to my regular folder.
Yeah, you can set up your email to filter them.
Are we
Yeah.
set up? Cause
oh, so that's where my emails are
Yeah.
coming. Into the other folder.
the other
no,
folder.
just MMA.
I want to
Are,
spin
go ahead.
off of what Vicky was just talking
Yeah.
about. So if you think about that, I'd like for you to think about it for employees as well, based on need. Because one of the things that I've been dealing with the bank is they want to get away from the toggle switches. Everybody wants to go to this 2-level security sign on. And right now, for the bank, we've got the toggle switch. They want to switch it over to cell phones. I said, oh, get away from me. And
They send it to you.
SAM.gov, they want to send me a code on my cell phone.
School
My
does it.
cell phone is also one of my business phones. It's linked up to one of my businesses. And I'm like, no. They want to get rid of the toggle switches because I can give it to Lindsay or I can give it to Tom. You know, so if you're considering that, which I think is a good idea, at least try to consider it for employees based on need as well.
I think that's great, a great idea and just for that reason. But
Yeah.
I mean, when I was on the board 10 years ago,
Yeah.
I did intertwine everything
Yeah.
because that was a matter of convenience and we didn't have the
Other things.
technology and the, we instituted that later on.
Yeah.
But,
Well, Times
And I
keep
don't-
changing every minute.
Well, I find myself fighting with these people. They want the dual system. And so even like main pers, it calls here. If we ever have to shut the office down, we're in trouble because I won't get the phone call to get the number, to key into the system, to get me to the second level.
Yeah, the
You know.
thing I guess that ties into that, I'll just bring it because a lot of boards and committees factor this into is like they want town issued emails. And you know, like we originally talked about doing this
Mhm.
last year during budgets because it was a simple, we could get them a basic email, not a big deal. They can connect it on their phone if they want or home computer. But then with the new policy that we had to institute, you have to have the 2FA, which is a two-factor authenticator. So it won't be a massive expense, but they're about $50 a piece. So if you did every board, committee, or whoever you decided you wanted to have, I'm thinking like planning board, maybe budget committee, maybe ZBA, like, something, I'm not really sure who we want to institute first, but they would need the fob, and then they would need the email, and the email's $22 a month per user. So it ends up being, each person, it would cost, a couple $100 a year just for an email.
Where are we at with the IT
we
committee?
would only do chairs then.
There's
Or
She's
one
not
member
on
of each
it.
committee.
You're not on the IT, is that
It's just
Nigel?
Nigel and Bill.
That's
It's Bill
ridiculous.
and Nigel.
Nigel and who?
Bill.
Bill?
No, I don't want,
Okay.
No.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
sorry.
Okay.
So has that filled your brains pretty well for our next meeting? Because at the next meeting, I kind of need to know where we're going so I can start building and Lindsay can start building. You
So
know,
my-
what we're looking at.
No, I want to go back to the no. Where I was going with that is, how are we going to know what everybody needs? Okay,
I'm
it's
not
great.
shy, I'll tell you.
I know that, but how are we going to look at this strategically when you start talking committees and boards and what have you? Somebody's got to let us know.
What we did, so the contract we have with Brendan, he oversees every electrical device we have. He has,
I understand that, but we've got to justify this.
I know, so what happened last year when we started talking about this, we first had a list of everyone on the committee.
Mhm.
And then we went, which ones do we think need an email, like based on their function, and like planning board, I'll use an example, they do town business.
Yep.
Constant, they meet twice a month, they're reviewing applications, all the time. So, that was one where it's like, okay, them versus maybe Kennebunk Pond Committee, we might say, okay, Kennebunk Pond maybe doesn't need
No.
a town issued email, they're an ad hoc, they're gonna be done once they're done. So it was looking at those things, like we can have a list of everybody on the committee and go down that list and go, okay, based on these reasons, this group needs it, this group doesn't, this group needs it. There are some committees, like, we don't have a waste and recycling committee, but would they even need an email? Maybe not, we might wanna say, let's get, the committee up and running and then give it a year or two, and then if we decide, based on need, we'll come to that conclusion. But I think I can just do a list of all your committees, and then we can talk about who needs it.
Okay.
And that'll help us
I'm doable. Yep.
funnel
Yeah,
into.
So it doesn't get out of hand.
So we had started down that road last year with the budget.
Yeah.
And we had a list of committees and we figured out how many emails
Yeah.
we would need.
Alright, okay.
And then we got the notification from the insurance company
Right.
about the cybersecurity policy.
Hey.
So we had to add another level to that, which has bumped it.
A basic email. So we had the option of just doing emails all you get, so you disseminate information. It was like $6 a month. So it was like really cheap. We did the math last year. And so we can still go that route.
Mhm.
So that's $6 a month, and then the upgrade is we have the suite. So we have like all this other fancy stuff with it that most of us don't even really use, but, so there's the difference between $6 and $20 a month for an email, and then the fob key is like $50.
So that's the hangup, so something changed, and that's part of this process.
The only
Yep.
other,
You know,
like,
it's you start down the right path, and all of a sudden you get hit,
Yeah,
and you're like, okay, we have to reconvene and rethink.
the only
So-
other thing I can think of, I don't know if it'll be a backlash or not, but like if someone was just like, I don't want to use my personal phone, well, then you gotta talk about buying them a device.
Well, so ORC went through this as far as how do they manage their documents, right? Because they had a couple FOA requests, and they also, similar to how charter functions, they have documents that are like working drafts, and they come back to them each time. And so with the lack of that, because we didn't get that far for any committee, not just them, basically what they had implemented was they just sort of put together a formal process of how they were gonna do at each meeting, like
Yeah.
this person's gonna do this person's gonna do that. The file's going to live with, I think at the time Peg was still secretary maybe, I don't remember exact details, but she was gonna house the actual document, and then either after every meeting or after whatever, she was gonna actually just email a copy to you, so that it gets filed somewhere.
Don't do that, but no,
Yeah, and I don't know what their output has been since then, I'm just saying, like, I think with a lack of that, they kind of came up with a process, and we had done something similar in charter.
And it wasn't a bad idea, and like when I do the project statements for the committees and stuff, and I have a couple out there already, I've kept this language in there that any documents they create is under ownership of the town.
Yeah.
And when I interview like volunteers for committees too, I ask them like, I ask them some hard questions like, one is, are you okay with doing documentation? Because a lot of people have kickbacks saying, I don't have time to do minutes or this and that. So I ask people that, I explain to them, we're a public entity. You're doing business for the government, so long as you're focusing on your committee needs, a FOA request should not be an issue. It should just be like, yeah, here's what we're working on because we're transparent. So I explain that to people too, that yes, you create drafts and somebody might come along and want to FOA it, and I don't see it as a big deal being FOA'd, but I guess some people get a little unhinged with it.
I guess I would be curious as to whether there would be like a Dropbox or OneDrive or something.
I just
would
wrote
be
that
an
down,
option.
Dropbox, Google
Well,
Docs.
something, because that's what we had ultimately started in charter, we used Google Drive, and it got really clunky and weird. I'm wondering if we could price out an option for, the town, because you can get it per year or whatever. We use this on a couple other different committees that I'm part of that aren't associated with anything else that I do, where I'm granted access to be able, and it's at whatever access level the owner wants me to have, right? I can edit documents, or I can just save stuff in there and view stuff in there. I guess all I'm looking to try to accomplish is just a place where these committees can kind of dump the stuff, right? We're ORC, we have access to the ORC folder, and after every meeting, we drag and drop that file right into the folder, so that if there's a FOA, Lindsay can click on that, and there it is. Here's all our minutes, here's all our whatevers. Just something so that it doesn't have to, I just think $20 a month for an email account seems silly to me, where we could just pay like, I don't know, $150 a year or something for Dropbox, and you can designate all the owners and all the viewers and all the people.
That's an idea.
That's a great idea.
Because I wound up using my drive for charter. It's still on my drive. The other thing to ask Brendan about, in this, you still would need someone to filter the emails, but create a phantom email for some of the committees that go. So like, follow me for a second. We had a VC admin account, right? And then I had 10 other accounts, VC admin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way through. All of those emails, those 10 went to that one. So you have one person fielding all the emails. And that's where you can maybe have all the different committees phantom going to one, so at least the committees can have an email address that people can communicate to directly, but you're not paying the larger amount because they're phantom. So that's a way to do it, so that maybe you're fielding them or someone's directed to field them, But at least all the committees could have an email and stuff's going there and can be communicated through there. And you can forward it on to the correct appropriate people.
So how do you get around the two-way authorization?
I didn't need it. You got, Brendan, he did it for me, so you can ask him about that.
Yeah, no, we're
What-
required.
The 2FA because of our policy.
Right,
Yeah.
but I had that too though, because I had, but just check with them on the, see if the Phantom will work or the
We'll
Phantom or
sit down
Ghost.
with them.
See if that works as well, because it's still coming through to that one email that's approved. They're not going anywhere else. It's really hard to explain, but I had 10 ghost emails that went to one.
You should have been around when they first came out with the cloud and listened to that explanation.
What
We're like,
Microsoft
"What?"
suite do we have?
I still give that to my
Just like
custodial people, so.
We have 365? Do we have Teams on it?
Yeah, I hate
We-
TV.
Well, you know, I hated it too, but we have switched over completely at work to it, and everybody had the same, but they have improved. I'm hearing a lot of improvement. I don't know.
The suite's what costs $20 versus if you just want them to have an email, because some of them, it was just they wanted to be able to disseminate information without having to use their personal email.
Hmm.
So that would be like.
Because in
$6.
Teams, that you can get
Email account is free.
Well, they do this.
Your name and town of Lyman.
Some people have already done that.
Right.
But we have to have access to it, is the key.
Right, it's when it gets
For
forwarded,
FOA.
and then they don't wanna give over the information, but
Yeah, but yeah.
that's
Anyway.
what you brought up, it was like, there's
You have to
these
embrace it.
FOA requests, and people are like,
I'm
The only
not-
other question I wanted to ask, sorry, I'm like going backwards for a hot second. Salaries and benefits. I know we go to every department head and ask about like, what are you thinking of for your budget for next year? And I just, as part of this conversation, want to make sure if any department head is asking for staff or increase in hours or any of that, that's included in
So I
whatever's
had an
coming forward.
October 31st deadline, I asked all of the department heads.
Okay.
And if they had a staffing change, I asked them to notify me, and I got 0
Okay.
requests.
I just wanted to make sure that was part of this
Yeah,
conversation, so I
yeah.
wouldn't be surprised.
Is that the one on the front page?
Oh,
Assessor?
yeah, the Board of Assessment Review Clerk.
and then the outsourcing. the assessment.
Outsourcing this?
The lady said 80,000.
That's not salaries.
That would
Okay,
be.
yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
asking-
That would
yeah.
make sense.
Since
Okay,
we're in
now that-
salaries, I just want to make sure we're talking salaries.
Yes, so
Hmm.
that was the one I got.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's the only one, and I know Lindsay is tossing
Well,
around some
I did
ideas.
give you guys my recommendation, but we didn't land on anything, so.
Roger that.
I just want to make sure we had all
Yeah,
of
no, I
before we
asked,
came back.
I asked them because they don't usually fill in the payroll section, the personnel section. So I asked them to send it to me in a separate document,
Okay.
that way I could put it together and I got some
Yeah, I just don't want it
response.
to be like March and somebody's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, I wanted
Lord,
a
yeah,
new employee.
Yeah,
I
right.
know,
And then I'm
Lori's the
supposed
only
to.
one who's requesting something.
Board of Assessment Review Clerk.
Just somebody, probably a stipend position once a year.
And Jessica.
I did it
That
last
was
time.
reviewed.
You did it last time.
Oh, that's
So they
right.
can record the meeting and.
It was literally turning on YouTube and taking minutes of the meeting.
That was the committee that hadn't met in 12 years?
Yes,
Or however, I don't know how long, but.
It was about 12 years.
but I put the request in there, so we
Well,
can talk.
No,
about it.
that-
Yeah,
that's
because it did come up.
correct.
It did come up.
Somebody
So-
actually did what you asked.
Yeah,
so
she did. Yeah.
That's how it gets
Nice.
there, so.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we had all that.
Nice start, as
Okay,
always.
I'm not talking, I've been talking for 3 days straight. So unless they have, I just filled their brains, they look like they're gonna explode, so.
You asked if
It's nice.
there was room, if you filled our brains, and I will say that there's still room for the gerbil and the wheel in
Yeah,
there.
Nice stuff.
still running.
Ever since you changed over to this format, it's been so much easier to do.
It's a nice.
My format,
My little format here?
I created that in 1989. And it's done really well,
Yeah.
so
It's,
I drag it everywhere I go.
no, we keep these, we can keep these down, bring them back and forth,
Yeah.
like we always have?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're yours and I'll just keep updating.
Keep the paper industry alive.
List of notes.
I know what I'm doing.
Homework.
Hold on.
Reading.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Michelle.
After the hand to the projector, it'd be really nice if there was one hanging from the ceiling.